Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the South Orange County Economic Coalition's Health Forum. I'm Jake Anderson. I'm on the executive board for SOSEC. And before we get started, I'd like to thank our host of today's program, Saddleback College. Thank you. Elliot Stern, the president of the college, is here with us this morning, and I'd like to invite you up for a few welcoming words.
Testing. Thank you very much. Glad to be here. Welcome everybody to our campus. You may have noticed a little bit of mud outside and a lot of construction. We do have a lot going on, but hopefully you made it through the maze to find a parking lot and get here. As you came in, you noticed if you came in from Medical Center, we love that name. It talks about our connections to healthcare. If you came in that way, we're undergoing a campus beautification project at all three of our entrances. You noticed a big building going up. That's Gateway. It's our new student service building, modeled after a large Apple store. It actually has a Genius bar and no queuing anywhere, no windows, no gates, just lots of communal areas for students to sit while they're waiting to come up in the digital queue. So we have a lot going on campus, and we have very strong ties to the healthcare community, so we're very glad to be hosting this event today. You will meet the Dean of our Health Sciences area, Sherry Lowen, in just a moment. I also want to acknowledge one of my trustees is here, Marcia Milchiker. Welcome. And we sit in our hometown of Mission Viejo that we're very proud of and love to be part of, so we also have our council person here, Brian Goodell. Thank you for being here, Brian. We have many connections to the healthcare community, and so we're glad to be hosting this event. We offer 12 associate degrees in healthcare, 25 certificates in healthcare, anything from nursing, paramedic, MLT, medical lab technician, health information technology, down to CNAs and yoga instructors for short programs. We do it all. So all those employees that you work with, all those healthcare providers that you work with, ask them where they got their training and be proud and know that you're in good hands when they say it's at Saddleback. We serve about 23,000 students on our campus. We have 550,000 alums out there in our community. Any alums here today? Anyone been to Saddleback? Not a one. Thank you. Finally, Trustee Milchiker. That is not a requirement of being a trustee here, but it happens that Trustee Milchiker got a degree here as well. Anyway, we're very glad you're here, glad to be hosting. I know it's going to be a good event. I unfortunately cannot stay for the event itself because this is commencement week, so we're running around with celebration ceremonies, so doing lots of welcomes. But I had to do this one and say hi to you and welcome you to our campus. We're very glad you're going to have this important discussion here on Saddleback because we are very much tied to SOSEC and tied to the healthcare industry around us. Welcome to Saddleback.
Thank you, Dr. Stern. And we appreciate you hosting us here this morning. Now, if you please welcome Mission Viejo Mayor Brian Goodell, who will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Good morning. Please stand and put your hand over your heart and join me in saluting our flag to our great nation. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And I also want to introduce Mayor Pro Tem Trish Kelly, joined us this morning as well.
Thank you, Mayor. It's great to see so many new and familiar faces in here this morning. If this is your first time attending a SOSEC event, let me just briefly introduce our organization and its mission. The South Orange County Economic Coalition is the leading voice of business in South Orange County. We are a membership-based organization that has served the region since 1969, promoting a strong economic climate and providing updates on issues discussed at the state, county, and local levels. Could we please have our SOSEC board members stand to be acknowledged? This really is the team here that makes it all happen. At this time, I'd like to invite South Orange County Economic Coalition Chair Kelly Lee to the stage to say a few words.
Thank you, Jake. Can we all give Jake a round of applause for moderating this discussion today? He is going to do a seamless job, and he is pinch hitting today. So I think that, you are doing so fantastic and currently serving as our chair-elect. So really thankful that he is here today, and he came early to prepare for this new role today. So thank you for joining us this morning. We are happy that you've joined us for the inaugural Health Care Forum for the South Orange County Economic Coalition. We want this health forum to serve as a valuable resource, whether you are in the industry or whether you're new to the industry like myself. And we're fortunate today to have a few elected officials with us here today that have already been here and introduced, but I think it's very important to have them introduced again in this formal capacity. So when you hear your name, can you please stand for a round of applause? Let's hear it for the Honorable Brian Goodell, Mayor of the Mission Viejo. The Honorable Trish Kelly, Mayor Pro Tem of the City of Mission Viejo. The Honorable Dwayne Cave, President of the Molten Niguel Water District. And Jose Solario, former Assembly member and partner at the Molten Niguel Water District. We also have the Honorable Marcia Milchiker, President of the Board of Trustees of the South Orange County Community College District. Did I miss anyone, perhaps? Great. Well, thank you again, and I want to turn it back over to Jake.
Thank you, Kelly. The last but certainly not least, we'll recognize our all-star sponsors who are able to make this program today possible. First, I'd like to thank our title sponsor, Providence Mission Hospital. With 2 locations in Mission Viejo and Laguna Beach, Mission Hospital offers a wide range of medical specialties and subspecialties with an unparalleled standard of care. Their dedication to serve, compassion, and quality health care has made them an essential caretaker of the South Orange County community for over 60 years, and the #1 ranked hospital in Orange County by Newsweek and in South Orange County by U.S. News and World Report. So great job. That's incredible. I'd also like to thank our silver sponsors, City of Hope, Orange County, and MemorialCare Health Systems. We also thank our host sponsor, Saddleback College, once again. Thank you. And last but not least, many thanks to our refreshment sponsor, UCI Health. You can thank them for the wonderful, delicious coffee and that amazing machine outside. Being here so early, I needed an extra cup before we came in here, so thank you. Now please join me in welcoming our moderator for today's program. Dr. Edward S. Kim is Physician-in-Chief and Senior Vice President, City of Hope, Orange County, Construction Industries Alliance, City of Hope, Orange County, Physician-in-Chief Chair, and Vice Physician-in-Chief and Professor, City of Hope, National Medical Center. That is an incredible title, Dr. Kim. Dr. Kim is among the country's foremost experts in molecular prognostication, which advances cancer detection and personalized therapies for lung, head, and neck cancers. He has served as a co-principal investigator on numerous studies and protocols and co-authored more than 200 published articles, book chapters, and reviews in top-tier journals such as The Lancet Oncology, Journal of Clinical Oncology, Cancer Discovery, Cancer, Nature Medicine, and Cancer Prevention Research. Dr. Kim has been recognized as one of the top cancer experts in the nation and among cancer care's leading advocates for diversity, equity, and inclusion. A respected clinician, researcher, and physician executive, he is a trailblazer who is eliminating practices that exclude minority populations from clinical trials and result in serious gaps in care and research. Before joining City of Hope, Dr. Kim was the chair of Solid Tumor Oncology and Investigational Therapeutics, the Donald S. Kim Distinguished Chair for Cancer Research and Medical Director of the Clinical Trials Office at the Levine Cancer Institute, Atrium Health in Charlotte, North Carolina, and a professor of medicine at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. Prior to the Levine Cancer Institute, he held many leadership positions, including associate professor in the Department of Thoracic thank you. Head and Neck Medical Oncology at the University of Texas MD Anderson Cancer Center and the University of North Carolina Keenan Flagler School of Business. Dr. Kim, the floor is all yours.
My apologies for that introduction to all of you. You can just call me Ed. It works just perfectly. It's really great to be at this inaugural event. I live down in Laguna Niguel. We moved here 2.5 years ago, but I feel like a Mission Viejo resident. I play pickleball every Sunday at the Felipe Tennis, and I'm a member there, so that's something I joined this past year. The Pacific Symphony has enjoyed much good relationships as well, and I'm a board member for that. So it's really great to have a place like Mission Viejo locally, close by, and it's my first time on the campus. So it's a beautiful campus, and I'm excited to see all the changes that are occurring for Saddleback. So it's really great. Yes, yes, we love it. We love it. So, I have the honor this morning of moderating this first panel, and really, it's about the people we're going to bring up to this panel and hear their thoughts and their brains and share some ideas of what they're coming through. So, I'll have them first come up to the table, and we'll introduce them one at a time. So, Dr. Sherry Lowen, who's the Dean of Health Sciences, Saddleback College, who's been introduced. Thank you, Sherry, for joining us this morning. Seth Teagan, he's the Chief Executive at Providence Mission Hospital. So come up, yes, applause at a time. Dr. Maggie Senthil, who's the Director for the Center for Clinical Research at UCI. And Brandy Cassingham, who's the Chief Nursing Officer and Vice President of Patient Care, MemorialCare Saddleback Medical Center. So thank you all for being here. All right, well, I want to try and keep this casual and open. We have some questions that we're going to go through. We'll try to hear the perspectives of this very diverse panel we have, and I'll chime in on a few things as well. But, I think everyone's asking about COVID, right? And at least we're not seeing news stories every evening. That's the first thing. The second is we're all in this room without masks, which is great. We can see each other's faces and finally interact again. I don't think they'll be the end of these things, my opinion. I think we just sort of do our best until the next thing comes around, and that's just generally how things work. But I think most people agree that the pandemic side is at least crossed, and we're in the endemic side. So where are we going next? What do we do out of this? So Maggie, I'm going to start with you. We're going to go first names up here. What are we doing? What have we learned from this pandemic, and what's UCI doing, for instance, in your experience with that?
Okay, let's get it on. Okay, well, I think we can talk about as to what our experience have been in this past few years, right? 3 years that we have to go through this really devastating situation. One, we have realized that humans are extremely resilient and we are creative, right? So the fact that we have been able to come up with solutions and rapid solutions to be able to address this devastating situation is remarkable. And the scientific discovery that led for us to get out of this trouble is also something that we have learned. So continuously investing in novel discoveries and thinking about the dangers that are lurking that might show up its ugly head is also important. So not only thinking about our preparedness for addressing issues like this that affects the whole world, but also looking for what might be out there and how do we prepare ourselves to any emergencies, particularly, healthcare becomes a very important aspect of it, right? And that's one of the things that we continue to talk about still. And how do we train our workforce and how do we think about emergency preparedness? Always, continuously. It's not like we stop our efforts in thinking about how we respond to this. And how do we train our workforce is also something that we are thinking about at UCI, right? So how do we run clinical trials when there is a pandemic? Who comes in to take care of these patients? I mean, we ran a lot of COVID trials in UCI. Definitely a significant number of COVID trials. And how do we bring clinical research coordinators? So those are the training and also planning that we have to be thinking about in anticipation of future emergencies.
And Brady, I'd really love your thoughts on that, and those are great insights, Maggie. From a nursing perspective and our frontline workers, we've seen the issues with burnout and the long hours and attrition, and we'll get to some of that later. But as far as from a pandemic standpoint, what have you observed as far as people emerging from it?
Well, I mean, you raise a really good point there. Mental health, right, is so critical, and we have such a huge lack of resources of mental health in our communities today. And we have to put those extra efforts into making sure that we're providing the next generation of behavioral health, mental health professionals, so that we not can only help our healthcare workers, but the population as a whole. But in terms of nursing, yeah, we have just put a huge emphasis. We've always had workforce development, but really thinking about taking care of our workers in a way that is focusing on their mental health. And it's okay to have anxiety, it's okay to have PTSD, and how do we get you help to work through some of those things? Looking at the workforce environment, making sure that we have healthy workforce environments is so critical to ensuring the health and care of our workforce so they can take care of our patients and families. But just reflecting back a little bit on the pandemic, I think of three words, really. I think of mobilization, collaboration, and communication. And they were so critical during the few years that we just went through. And a huge thank you to all my healthcare colleagues here and everything that you did during the pandemic. But it's really thinking about how do we keep our healthcare workers safe, right? That was critical. So we set up these triaging systems right away, thinking about zoning, how we keep sick patients in one area and healthy patients in another. Because in an emergency department, right, you have healthy patients coming in, and then you have the patients who had COVID symptoms. And how do you make sure to separate them so you're not only keeping the patients and families safe, but you're keeping our healthcare workers safe? So that was really critical. And I think as we move forward, what it's allowed us to do is build systems and processes that allow us, excuse me, to expand and contract by watching the data, right? So we know community levels are low, but as Maggie just mentioned, we're watching the next thing. We're still watching COVID, we're still watching flu, we're still watching RSV, all of those different things, and making sure we can respond to them appropriately, looking at those triggers of when we need to put those systems and processes back in place, like masking, and other checks and balances.
Yeah, no, those are great insights. I particularly resonate with the mental health aspect since I'm not always described as smart, but at least I'm a planner, and I married a psychiatrist 25 years ago, so I was definitely planning for the future on all of this stuff. But there's a critical shortage around that. Seth, I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts as someone who runs a healthcare system and a hospital here. Some of those things that we've brought up about what are we going to take away from the pandemic and where we've had to pivot now going forward.
Well, first I would say Maggie and Brandy are pretty smart. So I would agree with their comments so far. The other word I would add is inspiration. Talking about how inspirational our healthcare workers were during this time. I can remember a time coming to work when shelter in place was going on. And it's a real surreal experience if you worked in healthcare, being the only car on Crown Valley Parkway at 6:30 in the morning, or one of the few cars traveling the 5 going to UCI or to Saddleback. That is an incredible, I think, experience and very inspirational to our community. One of the things that I took away, Ed, was how important, what a great reminder COVID was to our community members about how important just health is, not just healthcare, but health as a human being. And when you don't have your health, especially early on when this is pre-vaccine, pre-masking, we really didn't know what we were dealing with, pre a lot of the clinical trials even, how grateful our community was to have great health care. And one thing that I think you'll hear from leaders in healthcare around Orange County, even though when you look at our panel up here, and Ed, of course, is our moderator, and you say, well, these are all competitors. And I don't think when you work in healthcare, we look at it that way. I think we look at it in a way where we're here doing the same work, and it might just say something different on our name badge. We're really doing the work together to try to take care of our community in the best way possible. So going back to the inspirational part, though, I was so inspired every day by our healthcare workers and our caregivers. You have to remember, these are folks that were faced with the situation of putting their own health and the health of their families at risk every day. The analogy that I like to use is if you think back to 9/11 and you think about our first responder community, as those planes went into the Twin Towers, people were running for their lives as the first responders were running towards the tragedy. And COVID in many ways was like that, as everyone else was sheltering in place, figuring out how to work remotely, figuring out how to do, we did this at my house, doing virtual school. I wouldn't recommend this, by the way, with little kids, very challenging. But every day folks were leaving their homes and coming back into the hospital to take care of their community. And I think that's part of the beauty in working in healthcare, and I think having a physician and a nurse up here, they would agree with me. People really feel like they're called to do this work and to take care of other human beings. And so that was really inspirational for me, not just watching our healthcare workers and people, but our community coming together and rallying around the importance of healthcare.
Oh, thanks, Seth. Sherry, are you seeing that hopefully this tragedy has provided a spark to our next generation of folks that we desperately need in all levels of healthcare, including nursing and APP and pharmacy and medicine? From your vantage point, I'm hopeful it's yes, but I don't know what it is these days.
I think it's very interesting in the scholars that are coming forward of today. And some of them, of course, we know lived in their high school years, this experience. And if we're seeing anything out of that, it's testing the resilience of our students, testing their ability to make the best case that they can in these very exigent circumstances that we find ourselves out of COVID. But that's not to mitigate the trauma that came out of that or the deficits that have come out of that, because we shifted an entire learning model within a matter of days, and that doesn't come without costs. And then what we have learned over the last few years is how to integrate both. So if I were to give any words of hope, even the scholars coming forward, is they're much more adaptable. They're able to learn in many different environments. And so we really tested their resilience.
Yeah, I think resiliency was such a critical aspect as someone, who we all went through it, and my daughter was in college when it started and, had a different experience. And even in the population that we serve, we are a cancer hospital. That's all we do from top to bottom. And, we have very different policies that we have to apply for folks who are undergoing chemotherapy or biologic treatments or getting auto stem cell transplants, or even who are survivors, as many of you may be, or it's different than just being okay with everybody out in public. When you have a immune risk, it sets a little bit different bar. So it was very, very tough. Especially with our population, and that's every one of our population. I still remember the first time I had to talk to a person over video, telehealth, to tell them that it was time for hospice. And that's a challenging discussion to have. I will say, though, it was really nice because, we had a relationship. They were at home on their sofa with their family members. And it was a very positive experience from that aspect. So we all had to learn how to do that. There wasn't that, human touch aspect of it, but you can still transmit feelings and care and compassion, even if it's video these days. And I think we've learned that over the platform. So, what I really like about what's happened is that it forced us in the healthcare arena to pivot. That's not something we think of very quickly. Agile is not something we think of in healthcare that often, even though we have such great technology and great drugs and services. One of the things I got to observe as a newcomer to City of Hope was, there were investigators at City of Hope who invented a vaccine in the lab, manufactured it in our GMP facility, and started a phase 1 clinical trial, all within the pandemic, and then now have licensed that out. So we can do it with speed, believe it or not. If we cut out some of the regulatory tape, we can move things faster and forward. So I think that's a really important point. So Maggie, do you have a question? Yeah.
I actually want to add to what you have just said, Ed. And you pointed out about caring for patients with a diagnosis of cancer. It doesn't stop because we have a pandemic. And as a surgeon, I'm a cancer surgeon. And we continue to operate on patients because, of course, their cancer needs to be removed. Pandemic doesn't stop cancer from growing. So we were continuing to operate. And what we had to, just kind of similar to your experiences, what was both challenging, but at the same time, what nurses did for our patients was remarkable. And I just want to recognize the work that was done. So our patients, they didn't have family members who can come and visit them. So they were by themselves, having undergone a major surgery in the hospital, not even having their closest relatives by their side for 10 or 14 days that they are in the hospital. And what our nurses did at UCI will have a FaceTime with their family members morning and at night, just making sure the patients feel that their family is close by, and so did the doctors. I really believe that it also showed the humanism and the care and the affection and the compassion that we have for each other, and be able to show that empathy for our patients. And I was amazed by the care, and I was very privileged to be at UCI to witness that kind of nursing care. It was just amazing. And I think we all share similar experiences. And I definitely think COVID has changed our perceptions, even as physicians, as to how care can be delivered, but also appreciates that human touch and the need to be physically also present when someone is in pain and so on. So there's a lot that we have learned, and I appreciate you sharing that story.
Yeah, no, it's never easy to go that route, but just as healthcare providers, we have to do what we need to do to take care of folks and keep moving forward. But I just, that's my little pitch for drug development, needs to go faster. We need to get these drugs out to the people, and we proved it can happen. So I don't care if you like the terminology warp speed or any of that other stuff. We're not talking about politics here. We're talking about let's just get the drugs out quicker. So, okay, let's pivot. Seth, I want you to talk about Providence. You guys are growing. There's a lot of places growing in this county, which is amazing. You're going to be opening a new tower, which is, again, great for the community to have, more resources available. Can you expand and tell us about that?
Yeah, sure. Well, one, just for some perspective around the size of the company. So Providence is one of the nation's biggest Catholic health systems. We have 120,000 employees, 52 hospitals. Here in South Orange County, Providence Mission Hospital, we have 2,700 employees. So we're one of South Orange County's largest employers. Most of our caregivers and physicians also call South Orange County home. So we're a big part, I think, of the fabric of the community. But part of the expansion plan, Ed, has been around the age of our campus. I've actually been out on the road show. I've been to the city of Mission Viejo talking about this and other local communities, talking about how 51 years ago this summer, this community actually came together and said, we're going to need a hospital here someday. And I love this story. If you talk to folks that were in this community 51 years ago, there was one exit off the 5. It was Crown Valley Parkway, and that went out into a field over here somewhere, and the other way it went down through what is now Laguna Niguel all the way down to PCH. And those community leaders, really from the ranch, the land we sit on was donated by the O'Neill family, or the Moiso family now, which is the Rancho Mission Viejo company. And they said, we're going to have a hospital here. We're going to create a problem by bringing all these people into South Orange County. We're going to have a hospital. So that little hospital from 51 years ago has now blossomed into, just like my colleagues up here, one of the great medical centers we have here in Orange County, and that's not unique to us. I really want to compliment UCI and Saddleback, MemorialCare, Hogue, City of Hope. I mean, we're so blessed here in Orange County to have great access to healthcare, and competition actually makes healthcare better for all of you as consumers. So we're grateful to that. We have some unique things in our campus. One, the age of the original part of the building is part of the driving force behind our campus expansion. Believe it or not, today 40% of our rooms are shared rooms. And so as you think about your experience as a patient, one, you don't want a roommate. I think that's pretty basic. I know I don't. But also, if we learned anything through COVID, the challenges with infection prevention, separating patients, being able to make different cohorts of patients within the hospital was exceptionally challenging for us, especially as the census swelled to at our peak. Just at Mission Hospital here, we had about 130 plus COVID patients that were all in isolation. And when you have a big hunk of your rooms, about half the rooms, that you're unable to make single occupancy, or they were made single occupancy during that time, it really created some challenges for us. So there's the getting to private rooms, there's the infection prevention part, there's the technology part too. Putting in all new operating rooms. Believe it or not, the oldest part of our campus has all of our operating rooms in it today, or the majority of our operating rooms. That will replace all of our operating rooms, and then a bunch of other infrastructure and technology. But if you look at our campus, or if you're familiar with the campus, we had the shortest commute here today, unless you work at Saddleback College, by the way. So we're lucky in that regard. But across the street from us, we have the Leonard Cancer Institute. And the reason I point that out is not because we want to talk about cancer, but really because of meeting a local community need. So this community, again, came together and said, we want a cancer center in South Orange County to really serve everyone from San Clemente just to north of here, and then, of course, northwest to Laguna Beach and some of our other service area. That community came together again, and we built a $70 million cancer center, half of which came from philanthropy and community leaders saying, we want to invest in healthcare in our community. And so we're really proud of that, and we know our community is going to come together again as we talk about our campus expansion, trying to put their fingerprints on it in that same way. So I think it's an exciting time here in South Orange County. The only other highlight I would catch for this group, which we don't talk enough about as an organization, but we see over 3,000 traumas a year at our medical center. So we're the second busiest trauma center in Orange County behind UCI. UCI is a level 1 trauma center. We're a level 2, and really the distinction there is they do burn, we do not. And burn, as in like if you get burned in a car accident. But we're blessed to have a CHOC on our campus as well. And so having CHOC, Children's Hospital Orange County on the 5th floor of our first bed tower has really allowed us to have an expansive collection of physician expertise, because we have to have it, being the only level 2 adult and pediatric trauma receiving center in South Orange County. So I think it's great if you're a consumer here, if you're in a major car accident, we're here to take care of you. And then anywhere kind of up and down the table here, you have great health care to pick from, including City of Hope in their investment that they're making in Irvine. And what I would leave you with is I think we can do more together, and I know we've spent time talking with City of Hope and also our other healthcare partners in this community, really talking about the task at hand, and that is to take care of Orange County in a world-class way, where folks don't feel like they ever have to go to LA or anywhere else around the country to get world-class care. And that's not unique to Providence. That's really, I think, healthcare in general here in Orange County. So we're blessed to be consumers in that space.
I think that's very well said, Seth. What amazes me in this region is that we're going to have almost $2.5 to $3 billion of healthcare investment between all the systems. And as someone who grew up in the Texas Medical Center in Houston, where it's the largest conglomeration of health entities in the world, I see that emerging down here in Orange County, and what that will lead to is big corporate entities and businesses, when they look for places to put headquarters, despite the taxes in California, we're hopeful that the actual base of care for their employees, for the people who come work for them, is going to be really established down here, and it's not just going to be LA or San Francisco. To that, Brandy, MemorialCare Saddleback Medical Center was named again one of America's best hospitals in 2023. I think we have a lot of hospitals down here that get that distinction, which is really great. And so give us an idea of what's going on. You're building this women's health pavilion, which again, it's really, really superb to focus on women's health care. We know that women are generally a lot more compliant than men on things. Maybe it's because there's health pavilions that are women's or not, I don't know, but we got to try and change that. But what's going on there?
Yeah, no, thank you. As Seth mentioned, right, it's so important to listen to the surrounding community and populations. And so one of the things that we do is we watch the changing demographics of our communities. And to give you a couple of 2 tangible examples, and we work in teams with our physician partners and our business development partners, Kelly Ruiz, Grant Gunther in the back there, and really looking at what we need to expand or contract in terms of services. And so one of the things we recently did, there's a lot of young families down in South Orange County. And so really putting an emphasis in our maternity care. We have great maternity care and outcomes at our women's hospital. And we have a level 3 NICU that allows us to care for those high-risk pregnancies. And recently, just a few weeks ago, we were able to open a dedicated OB emergency department 24/7 for our pregnant moms that are 24 weeks and over or 6 weeks postpartum to be able to enter through a separate entrance, get triaged quickly, and not have to go through the main emergency department. So something really our women are looking for, these young families. And on the other end of the spectrum, right, we're right across the street from Laguna Woods, who, as you mentioned, Seth, 51 years ago, we'll be celebrating 50 years next year. And I think all our communities got together and decided they needed to build hospitals, but we're excited about that. Anyway, so we're right across the street from Laguna Woods, which is about 19,000 seniors. And so we need to make sure that we're providing the most up-to-date evidence-based practice care for our older adults. And by doing that, we've become one of 800 emergency departments that have a geriatric accreditation. I see Patty nodding her head because we've had a great partnership with her with the Alzheimer's, Orange County Alzheimer's Association, and giving classes to our healthcare workers about delirium and dementia is just so important. And so we're accredited in our emergency department. And the other thing also is that we're part of the age-friendly healthcare systems from the Institute of Healthcare Improvement, which really focuses on, again, those evidence-based practices for the care of our older adults. So I've given you two very ends of the spectrum, and so that's what we're hoping to incorporate in our Women's Health Pavilion, is thinking about a woman's journey from maternity care all the way to her older adult life, and really creating some navigation services under that umbrella. As we all know, healthcare is super complex to navigate. So we'll have navigators that will help women navigate their healthcare. Under that Women's Health Pavilion, we'll also have oncology services, a brand new breast center that will be opening in the fall, and pelvic floor, which is so important that a lot of people don't talk about, but it's really important for women's health. And our new gynecologic oncology surgeon will be there, Dr. Delakia. And the nice thing also is it's not just geared towards having those services and treatments and so forth, but we'll also have a community education center in the Women's Health Pavilion. And so it'll allow us to have mental health lectures and wellness classes, and really think about how we can provide those educational portions to women. As we know, most women take care of the family as well, so how can we help provide them and educate them? Education is powerful in helping to focus on preventative medicine and keep our population safe. So, and of course, doing that in a really beautiful and spa-like environment also helps, right, decrease the anxiety of folks that going into a healthcare setting. We all know that it's not fun, maybe going into the doctor's office and so forth. So however we can make that less scary and really beautiful and calming for folks to come into, that's really our vision for the Women's Health Pavilion.
Oh, thank you, Brandy. That's really great stuff, and I think we'll serve the community very well here. Let me pivot over. Sherry, we've talked about workforce and healthcare training and where we're seeing issues there. We all can do the math here. No one's tearing down buildings to replace them. Everyone's building here. What are we doing to help provide the workforce, the skills, technology, et cetera, from your vantage point to populate and serve the people in this ever-growing county with people who really count, not the doctors I'm talking about. I'm talking about the nurses, the PharmDs, the people who are on the front lines. What do you see it from your standpoint?
So it is an expanding field in healthcare. We know that the GDP is growing in this area, and especially in Orange County, Southern Orange County, with the City of Hope, this region is becoming a huge medical center. For the education side of it and bringing in the new workforce, I think it's a really interesting, complex question about how to prepare that workforce for the coming age. And so I just want to take a moment and really acknowledge what we're all seeing with the advances of technology. So there was an individual back in '65, if you know Moore's Law, who originally proposed that there's it takes 2 years exponential growth for technology. That was back in '65, and this was with conductors and with computer technology. And for many years, that held true. But what is happening right now is it's happening in 18 months, and it will only continue accelerating. And this impact on education, yes, we can get the new widgets, we can bring them in, we can train our personnel on the new widgets, but it's more complex than that. When you have the intersectionality of technology and careers, you're talking about it's changing the fundamental way students think and communicate and behave. And we're seeing that in education. So I'll just give you one that's across the board, and that's AI. And we're seeing it with the English department. But it's hitting our department too, very subtly. So for those of you who may not be in medicine, I'm just gonna list some things that are happening right now. Elon Musk is designing for Alzheimer an implantable that will download the data and will be able to help individuals with brain diseases. We have AI looking at mammography and increasing the accuracy rate to 99% with a 30% increase in time. And not only that, the AI will then do a care plan. And we have where for mental health, we have AI out there and I'm not saying that it's not without concern, because there is a lot going on that AI is here with us, and it's true. But they have bots that will talk to patients with depression and will do cognitive behavioral therapy with individuals. And it's showing some positive results, but also some concerns. And the individuals know that they're talking to artificial intelligence. So these fundamental changes we're seeing across many different sectors, but what we're seeing in education is those students that are digital natives have a very different relationship with technology. And it affects their communication ability from what we have traditionally seen. So let me give you a really great example. In Japan, they are also experiencing care for aged population, really impacted. They don't have the personnel to care for aged populations. They have brought in a robot, it's called a care robot. And the population is accepting this care robot because they don't have the humans to be able to care for this population. And the aged population are accepting of it, but when you interview those individuals later, they're saying, I want a human connection. You know, yes, this is fine. They're teaching me how to do exercises, et cetera. But what you'll see in the digital natives that we have coming into the classes, they're sitting next to each other and having conversations on their phone by texting. And that when we get out there to train them in human care, they're having to learn new skills and new abilities because they're digital natives. Now, there's another impact to all of this and all the technology, and that is it's changing the positionality of the care team. So if you have AI that can read radiographs and design a care plan, where does that put the care plan team? And what is their new roles and responsibilities if we're doubling the amount of technologies that's happening in every 18 months? So where are we going to be? And this is not doom and gloom. This is an exciting time, but it is a fundamental shift, even in education. So we can train those students, but we also have to prepare them for the new environment that they're coming into. And that's an environment that's heavily technology. And it's beside the widget, it's just fundamentally how the systems will work.
No, I think that's well said. I think IT, if that's the future in healthcare, then I think a lot of us are very nervous right now. And we need a lot of training and folks to come in to help us there, because it definitely is a struggle from that standpoint. Brandy, from your standpoint, how are you cultivating leaders in this area? And it's not the way nursing used to be.
No, it's not. I mean, as you all probably know, there's so many different areas that nursing can go. And so one of the things that we've done at MemorialCare is we've developed a nursing leadership academy across the health system. And so it takes 25 of our brightest bedside nurses. There's an application process. And what we do is basically we introduce them to different areas of nursing leadership. So informatics, evidence-based practice and research, thinking advanced clinical practice like nurse practitioners and clinical nurse specialists, and then also administrative leaders. And it's a year-long program. We give them leadership training. We expose them to these different roles. And then they also work on a project that's directly related to our strategic plan to help, connect the dots to them and to the organization and the work that they do every single day. And it really, we've been very proud of it because it helps us also create a succession pipeline. And so many of those students who have been in the Nurse Leadership Academy have grown to be nurse managers, nurse educators. They'll work in information systems, as we really do need clinicians at the front line of the informatics world as well, because they help connect the dots between the technology and then the workflows behind those technologies. We love our Saddleback partners, so I just want to give a shout out to Saddleback College because we do love our Saddleback students and always just have a great, they're just really great students to partner with and their professors. As you know, all the hospitals in Orange County have lots of partnerships with these schools, right? It's so important to keep that pipeline, not just for nursing, respiratory therapy, physical therapy, to keep it flowing. And once they come into our organizations, it's really on us to make sure that we're continuing to connect their passion with the work that we do every day. And part of that is not just through leadership academies, but also thinking about how do we support them in their growth and development for higher education. We'll offer loan forgiveness programs, we'll offer tuition reimbursement programs, we'll offer scholarship programs. But then also thinking about cross-training programs and new to specialty programs. So you'll have your medical surgical nurse that now says, no, I don't want to do med-surg nursing anymore. They'll be 6 months into it. And they'll say, I want to do labor and delivery. And so we have to pivot quickly and have those programs in place to really ensure that we sustain the growth and development of our workforce, but then also, right, it's keeping them passionate about the work that they do every day.
No, that's very well said, Brandy, and I think it is a pivoting generation, as both you and Sherry have talked about, of how we have to train this. Seth, I'm going to ask you a question, not as someone from Mission, but as someone who moved here 2 years ago. It's expensive to live here. I know that's the understatement of the morning I just said. As I thought about bringing an umbrella this morning, I was thinking about how everyone told me that California, is a sunshine tax, and over the last year, I'm still trying to figure out where my tax dollars are going. Everybody said that's kind of an exception this past year, but I'm just living it day to day here. I feel like we should get some tax credit back if there aren't certain numbers of days of sunshine that exist. That just a thought. But how are we going to get people here to live here, to buy stuff here, to raise their families here? Of all the $2.5 billion of investment in new buildings and new services that we're bringing, how are we going to do that?
Well, as somebody that moved here 4 years ago, I can tell you it was stunning to me coming from the Midwest, just the difference in the cost of living. And Ed's totally right, the sunshine tax, though it doesn't feel that way with the May gray going on right now. I was kind of puzzled like you, Ed, this morning coming here knowing that the sun isn't shining. But so when we talk about healthcare in Orange County and us not competing, taking care of the community, I think that's a genuine statement. I would also say where we are competing is around workforce and labor. And that's not exclusive to nurses, x-ray techs, pharmacists, it's physicians as well. I think oftentimes people think, well, geez, physicians in the healthcare pyramid are maybe on top of that pyramid in terms of compensation. It's equally as hard to recruit the best and brightest from around the country, the best surgeons, the best oncologists, the best primary care doctors. How do you get them to come to South Orange County where really the salary is comparable to any other major metropolitan area? That could be Chicago, that could be Milwaukee, that could be anywhere around the country, Atlanta, but the cost of living might be triple or quadruple. I mean, that's a real issue that we're faced with. And so I think being one innovative, which to Ed's earlier comments about healthcare being slow moving, we're trying to move faster, I think, as an industry. I think the housing component plays a huge role in this. I don't want to speak on behalf of my colleagues here, but I would tell you for us in our location here in Mission Viejo and Laguna Beach, the nurse coming out of school, and now I think our nurses are coming out, believe it or not, making $50 an hour. They're trying to figure out how can I even afford an apartment to live within a half hour or an hour of my employer. And so I think that is a very real challenge that we're faced with. I don't know if I have the answer, though I know housing's a big component. We talked a little bit earlier with some folks outside just around tuition reimbursement and some other things that we can do to attract the workforce, but labor is a very real issue. And by the way, it's going to get worse. And this isn't a bad thing if you're a consumer. If you look at what UCI is doing in Irvine, City of Hope, MemorialCare expanding, Providence expanding, all of those new locations are going to take new people. And so we're competing for all those same people, all those same resources to be able to run our ICUs, to be able to run our operating rooms, to be able to run our primary care offices, to run our cancer centers. And so I don't know if I answered your question, Ed, but I think it's worth calling out that labor is a really big deal. And just back to the AI kind of technology components, there's the attracting and retaining. There's also the training, because I know we're here at a college. Remember, we have nurses that have been coming out of nursing school, just as an example, over the past couple of years that had never taken care of a patient. Yeah. Most of their clinicals maybe were online or web-based or in a lab. And so it's created this new nuanced challenge for us where we're maybe getting new healthcare workers that are greener, if that's a real phrase, as they're coming in and that need more mentoring or onboarding. There's also a new generation of the workforce, and this isn't a criticism, it's the reality of the world that we live in, where most of the communication is done like this. And we're in a business where it's done like this, where we're trying to interact with other human beings. And so your example of I want to interact with a human, I think is so important, probably to all of us as consumers of healthcare. And so trying to train folks coming out that maybe have been mostly online or are used to communicating via text or email, and getting folks to appreciate that the real experience in healthcare, everyone assumes we're high quality, that we're safe, that the physician or nurse that's taking care of me is expert in whatever field they have. But the way in which they treat people and how they make them feel is equally as important. And I would hope that we could all agree on that as consumers of healthcare. So it's going to be a real challenge for us at getting people down here to South Orange County, given the cost of living.
I'll be honest, Seth, you usually make me feel calm after you stayed, and you made me feel a lot more nervous after you said all that stuff. So, very frank. So Maggie, UCI Health is doing a lot of stuff. I love it when I drive by and I see buildings going up, whether it's on your campus, whether it's on Seth's campus, whether it's out here at Saddleback. I love that because that means things are growing, things are vibrant. But tell us about some of the really cool stuff that's happening at UCI right now.
No, thank you. So, I think in terms of the comments that have been made regarding education and teaching the next generation of workforce, thinking about expanding clinical care, as well as, really thinking about as to how we collaboratively work with all the different healthcare, settings that are here, right? So in terms of the reason for expansion, right? We know that we, as an academic institution that cares not only for cancer patients, but also the other medical conditions that are non-cancer, continuously expanding the access to an quaternary kind of hospital is essential. And that's also part of this collaborative work that we do with the rest of the healthcare systems that exist here. And so it is important, people with cancer also have other medical conditions that requires experts to be present to be able to care for them, and that's essentially a super important aspect of rendering care. And also thinking about us to, in this process, how do we train the next generation of workforce, right? So we have School of Nursing, Pharmacy, and Medical School. And that human component that was described here is an essential piece, right? And when and Brandy and Sherry brought up this very important aspect, right? All these technological advances have to be combined with compassionate delivery of patient care and understanding the goals and objectives of a patient and the nonverbal cues that come within, right? So our focus of teaching in terms of teaching our next generation and the workforce is meshed with not only technology, scientific advances, but showing the importance of having that human interaction and understanding your patient first before you use AI to deliver a treatment algorithm, right? Is that the algorithm the patient wants, right? So there is a lot happening in terms of how we think about education, how we think about patient care and expanding access to patient care, how we collaborate with our partners. And then finally, the research piece that Dr. Kim, Ed, pointed out, right? That's also something we're very proud of. We have over 500 clinical trials that we have for both cancer and non-cancer conditions, and for rare and ultra-rare diseases, right? Patients don't have to, as we pointed out here, do they need to go across the country or to LA to have access to the most advanced clinical trial? No, they shouldn't have to, right? So we as an academic health center should be able to offer that to the patients of Orange County right here in their backyard. And that has been a significant focus of UCI. And we certainly take pride in opening the clinical trials and assessing our community needs, understanding what our community needs and thinking about it very systematically. And not only thinking about having them come to the mothership, but how do we deliver clinical trial level care at point of care? How do we provide the same level of care across our different locations? So a patient who's being treated at UCI in Laguna Hills should receive the same level of care if they're coming to Orange or the newer Irvine campus, right? So that is also something UCI is continuously thinking about. And I, as a director of Center for Clinical Research, along with the leadership, that's a major focus as to how do we keep the standard of care across all these areas, not just the clinical care, but even from access to research, similar across our different locations so that they get the same level of care. So there's a lot of work happening, and we are very proud of all these three areas where we think about the mission of UCI, which is discover, teach, and heal. So every work is kind of integrated with these three missions in mind at all times. So yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah, no, I love that, Maggie. And, it's not incumbent on any one of us individually, right? As we've talked about, we've got to do this collectively. If this was a tough thing to solve, then it would have been solved it would have been easy and we would have done it. But that's not the case right now. I was excited to come transplant my family here to try and build the second campus of City of Hope. And you just don't see a lot of academic centers do that, right? Mayo Clinic has a couple of sites, but we thought they were more, winter havens for the people in Rochester who'd come down to Scottsdale or down to Jacksonville to spend their time with. But having been in North Carolina previously, I really resonate with your comments, Maggie, about expanding access. We were able to create a cancer institute there that opened 26 locations across North and South Carolina, and we wanted to deliver at point of care and offered clinical trials at all those places. I think City of Hope, what attracted me is that we've got 35 locations across Southern California and now sites in Chicago, Atlanta, and Phoenix. And so now we're trying to use this Irvine campus as our blueprint to how we move forward, because expansion is tough. You don't want to lose quality, you don't want to lose consistency, but you want to deliver that really laser-focused expertise. And so it requires human capital. And what was exciting was to be able to recruit 30 people, many of which were from out of state, out of the region, almost like a little tech startup. We got Ray Onk from MD Anderson, our Serge Onk from University of Chicago, all these people across the country who decided they wanted to come and do something with us. I also believe that moving forward, sometimes you have to go backwards. What do I mean by that? We both resonate with clinical trials, Maggie, you and I, and one of the efforts that I've been leading for the last 8 years is the way we write the clinical trials. Okay, let's think about that. We talk about access. We talk about, we got to open them everywhere and stuff. That takes a lot of work, a lot of resources. But when you actually look at how we write the trials, we write them in a way that excludes many people. So of everyone in this room, only about 4 or 5 of you would qualify for a clinical trial. It's 1 in 20. 1 in 20. Okay, think about that. And this is supposed to represent the real world population out there. You guys look like a real world population to me right here. I mean, again, but 37 different eligibility criteria are written in clinical trials. It's a checklist. And if 1 out of 37 doesn't fit, you don't qualify. So that's the problem. I believe in a world where we have less than 10 criteria, because in my world, in Maggie's world, this is cancer. You have a very different risk profile than someone who's just worried about their health. You are battling cancer, and so it should not be difficult to get into a clinical trial because you assume that risk based on what you're facing. And so we've actually worked with the FDA, the NCI. We've actually made changes to the national protocol template. They've taken off 10 different criteria over the last 5 years. So we're going to keep pushing them on this, but this is what's happening. And so that's what I believe. That has nothing to do with City of Hope, but it's just something we're going to personify within how we conduct our clinical trials, how we write them now, so that we can be more inclusive and not just the access, but it's part of what the blueprint is and how we allow people to come in. So it's some of the exciting stuff that's happening across the entire industry, and we look forward to that. So last question for everyone as we wrap this up. Affordability. Okay, we talked about the cost of Orange County. Let's even forget that. We'll go back to the Midwest, Seth, you and I. Okay, I grew up in Indiana, and how do we make healthcare more affordable for folks? I mean, this is the 20,000-ton gorilla in the room, and it's getting more expensive to do different things, and there's new technology, et cetera. So I'm going to go right down the list here. I'm going to have you each comment for a minute or two on what your thoughts are on that. Brandy, I'm going to start with you at the end, and we're going to come this way.
All right, thanks, Ed. So just to give you, I think I gave you context about Saddleback. We're one of 4 acute care facilities from LA County to South Orange County. And one of the things we're really committed to at MemorialCare, right, is expanding access. But it's access in a variety of ways, right? So thinking about dialysis centers, thinking about imaging centers outside of that acute care arena, so that folks can really access care at the right time, at the right place, for the right cost. So if I have a sprained ankle, I can go to an urgent care rather than to an emergency department. And just really thinking about that allows us, with all those accessible access points, over 220 of them, we can participate in those value-based care contracts with small and large employers, which then allows us to be accountable to patient experience metrics, to quality care metrics, and then also lowering costs, which is the total cost of care for everyone. So really participating in value-based care has been really MemorialCare's model since 2014, and really increasing access points and thinking about how we also work with our vendors to keep decreasing the cost of total care, supplies, equipment, right? Implants, all of those different things play into the total cost of care of patients. And so how we work with those folks and really drive down that cost helps the entire population as a whole.
Maggie?
Yeah, Ed, very good question. So reducing healthcare cost, right? As a health system, of course, when a patient comes in, that's a different story. But we, as care providers, we have to be thinking about how to reduce healthcare costs for all, right? Which means screening and preventative care and behavioral modifications, lifestyle changes, things that improve health overall should also be an integral part of every healthcare delivery system. We can't just care for the people who have diseases. We have to be focused on preventing diseases and improving the health of our community. So if we have to make a difference in healthcare cost, providing screening and preventative care more accessible and less expensive for people who both can afford it and cannot afford it, right, is equally important. And that's part of our responsibility as healthcare enterprises to be able to focus on that part. And then once we have patients who are coming in, it shouldn't be them asking us for advice as to what kind of lifestyle modifications they should be thinking about if they have hypertension or other diabetes problems. That should be part of how we deliver care and reduce the risk of complications that happens from chronic diseases. And when it comes to cancer, early identification. And that's also part of the screening work that we need to do. And reducing the cost of the overall cost of care comes from earlier identification, proper treatment, and reducing the risk of complications from the treatment, right? So there are many ways that we can actually impact healthcare cost, but I believe in prevention, and lifestyle modifications. As a cancer surgeon, it breaks my heart when someone comes to my clinic with an advanced colon cancer when it could have been entirely prevented with a colonoscopy. And it absolutely breaks my heart. And I'm like, why did we not catch this sooner? Where did the health system fail them? Patients make choices, but we as providers have the ultimate responsibility to ensure that the myths about prevention and screening are completely taken away, right? So there are fears, myths associated with it. That's also part of what healthcare systems should be doing, right? And that's one of the ways that we all should be focusing on how to reduce healthcare cost. Managing a stage 4 colon cancer is very expensive, and colonoscopy is a lot cheaper. So there's a lot to think about here.
Thanks, Maggie. Seth?
We have a mathematical problem on our hands, Ed, as it relates to healthcare finance. I mean, for us, our industry, our costs, just our labor costs have gone up in the past couple of years by over 20%. So for business owners or other people out there in the community, think about that. I mean, 25% cost increase to be able to run the same operations that we were running 3 years ago. Almost every year, our reimbursement model is taxed somehow by the federal government. So it typically goes down. The federal government and the state make up probably, depending on where you're located, north of 60% of the payer or 60% of the patients that you see. 1 in 4 people in Orange County are going to be over the age of 65 by 2030, meaning they'll all be Medicare eligible. So we know that number is only going to go up, at least for those of us working in healthcare systems here in Orange County. So I think a lot of it is going to be done outside of healthcare. I couldn't agree more around the preventative side, making sure that people are healthier in the communities that we serve. But also working with our elected officials, the government, and many of our private payers to help augment that additional cost. And I'm not picking on the healthcare insurers. I'm just telling you the data. While healthcare systems were upside down for the most part financially all the way through COVID, given the increased cost and the declining reimbursement, the large national insurers had 12 straight quarters of record earnings. And so there has to be some middle ground in there for us to partner with those big payers nationally to be able to augment making our communities healthier and to be able to reinvest in our communities in a meaningful way. I think oftentimes folks think, well, geez, these hospitals and healthcare systems make all this money and that's why, they're tax exempt. And the reality is, to build new facilities, to invest in new technologies, or to attract the best and the brightest from around the country, that's where those dollars go. And so finding that sweet spot, I think whether it's in preventative care in the community, the reimbursement mechanisms that we have, and this is a national issue, this isn't an Orange County issue or a Providence issue, this is a national issue for healthcare. And then working and partnering with our schools to generate the best and the brightest of the future, I think is gonna be kind of the recipe, if you will, for success in the future. So I started as a clinical person 20 plus years ago, and I remember probably every 3 to 5 years we heard this is the toughest time in healthcare. And there is no doubt that once again we get to say this is the toughest time in healthcare for all of those reasons.
Well said, Seth. Sherry?
So I'm going to answer this question in two opposite poles. So one will be a Luddite perspective. And for those of you who know that or may not know that, that's not wanting technology, like disavowing technology at a fundamental level. And then the other one is probably the camp I am, which is the more techie side. But I was in a conversation with the quality CFO over Intermountain Healthcare, and he was doing Doctors Without Borders. He would do this. And for those of you who may not know, they go into different regions and do healthcare. And so he was in a situation where they didn't have incubators. And so they really used a very simplistic approach to warm babies, is warm them with mamas, right? Put them with the mamas. And for the educational perspective on that is that in the cognitive science of teaching individuals how to learn, you give them all the fundamentals, you get them to identify things, but the ultimate level of learning is being able to take those concepts and apply it to new and different situations. And so that Luddite solution is where we want all of our students out, where they can know how to do all the high-tech stuff, but can go to a very simple solution given the situation that's needed for the patient. But also on the other side is the wonderful world of the Internet of Things. And for those of you, I was trying to look at everybody to see what watch you're wearing. But I happen to wear an iWatch. The Internet of Things is how our internet is bringing all of these devices, including where you have technology that can read stress levels in your voice and can report it to your healthcare team. So all of this technology out there that's being provided to the healthcare workers. This device, when I went to go see my doc, and I was talking about, so I was having heart palpitations, he said, let me see your readings on your EKG on there. And the reliability of this was apparently at a level where he was very comfortable with this. So I didn't need to go do that. So I think part of the solution will be technology. It'll be a bear that we'll have to have and to incorporate. But I think both of those provide solutions.
No, I love that. And for those of you who wear a wind-up watch like me, don't be ashamed. You know, it's okay. You know, I think touching upon what several of you said and the way I feel, I think we have to recognize we have to be very culturally sensitive around how we have healthcare, how we deliver healthcare, how we attract people into it. It's got to be the easy button, right? It's tough. And people don't like those hurdles, and it's kind of a pain to go schedule your colonoscopy. And although, you know, I was very anxious to get mine, but, you know, it's one of those things. You know, I believe that we can help people live longer and better, right? I'm a cancer person. You know, I started in lung cancer in 1999, and people live several months. And now people are living years. We're like, oh my gosh, what do we do with these people? What do you mean, what do we do with them? We let them get back to life. We let them do the work they want to do. We make sure that they're functional in society. These were the tenets that Sam Golter had for City of Hope. And, you know, we haven't always been a cancer institution. We started as TB. We were the folks who, you know, people migrated from LA to Duarte so that they could, you know, get treated or get humanistic care because they were dying from TB. Years later, we invented a synthetic insulin. in one of our labs. So everyone who's injecting in the world with insulin, that came from City of Hope. And, and cancer therapeutics has been part of that as well. And so the belief in our DNA is that you try to help people as best you can, offer them the latest technology, get to the grassroots, rehabilitate them, get them back into society. And if you're, extending life, make sure you're extending better life. And so that's that really spectrum from the prevention aspect that Maggie's mentioning to keeping it very simple with grassroots to all the way to now we've cured somebody or put someone in remission. We've got to make sure that they're functional as well. I think these are all things that will drive better cost, better value. And I think what we've heard this morning from this wonderful panel, and it's been a privilege to be up here moderating it, is a lot of these great viewpoints. And I want to thank each one of them for their contributions and their comments today. And I want to thank you all for being such an attentive audience. And I'm going to hand it back over to Jake. Thank you.
Wow, that was incredible. I learned a lot. Thank you to our panelists so much for being up here and sharing this morning. Your personal insights are invaluable. It blows me away, it really does. So thank you all. Thank you, Dr. Kim, for being here, for moderating, and thank you for all you're doing with cancer research and in the healthcare industry. We are very fortunate to live where we live, and we do, while there may be economic stresses in our future and in our past, we've always seemed to overcome those, and we have what I believe is the best and the brightest in our area to take care of our families. So thank you guys again. I appreciate it. Before we conclude, I'd like to thank Saddleback again for hosting us here today. This is a wonderful, beautiful room, and we really appreciate the opportunity to be here. The South Orange County Economic Coalition will continue to provide platforms for meaningful discussion on local economic issues, and we welcome your participation and input. I hope each of you will consider joining us next month at our board installation and happy hour event. This will take place the evening of the 29th at the outlets at San Clemente. But this concludes our program. However, we have about a couple of minutes before we have to pack up, so please feel free to stay, mingle, and enjoy the coffee outside and that amazing big conglomeration of coffeeness that we have going on. So thank you, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your day.